providing me the opportunity to come in and speak to you today about a bill that I consider to be perhaps the most important bill that this building will hear this year. This bill...
And I thought it was my TDI bill.
Well, that's a pretty important bill for me as well. I think this one has a much bigger overall impact on our local economies and our state economy. At the end of the day, what this bill is about what I believe is legislative overreach. This building, this committee, the House and the Senate, should not be dictating something to cities and towns that they should be negotiating on their own. In some ways, this bill helps to point out what's so broken in Rhode Island. Because when the firefighters didn't like the outcome of what happened in North Kingstown, they came here looking for relief. And the reality is that, based on the research that we did with Watchdog Rhode Island firefighters are some of the best well-compensated firefighters, especially for our cost of living, in the entire country. So the question becomes, what is this bill actually doing? Now I know the Senate has a sub-A. Is there a sub-A here at this point? Okay. So what this bill does, with a 42-hour work week, interpreted in its most costly way, is if a firefighter works a 56-hour week instead, it's asking for 14 hours of overtime. And 14 hours of overtime at time and a half ultimately would raise a firefighter's compensation from a 42-hour week to a 56-hour week by 50%. Now,
15 or 50?
50. So the question becomes, are Rhode Island firefighters compensated half as well as firefighters in other parts of the country? The answer to that is absolutely not. And so I believe what the right thing to do is firefighters deserve to be paid well for their job. There's no question about that. But firefighters in Rhode Island do not deserve to be paid substantially more than firefighters in other parts of the country. And that's why this bill is so dangerous, and that's why this bill is so inappropriate. Let municipalities determine the wages for firefighters in their own negotiations. It should not be dictated by this bill. Do you believe it's your job to pass a law that would make Rhode Island firefighters among the most highly compensated firefighters in the country? If you pass this bill, that is in effect what you would be doing. Your job should be to provide ways to save money to Rhode Island cities and towns, not to take those tools away. This bill is really a way to quash the movement to move our firefighters to 24-hour shifts. This bill would lock Rhode Island into what is in effect a failing status quo. This bill would thwart reform and would cause our cities and towns serious financial harm. Central Coventry, and Lonsdale. These failing and failed fire districts are living examples that our fire cost structure isn't working, and it threatens the safety of our citizens. The fiscal emergencies in these places should be a wake-up call. Why are you considering inserting yourselves where you don't belong by considering dictating overtime policy in Rhode Island cities and towns? And why are you not dealing with the fiscal crisis that has enveloped Central Coventry, and Lonsdale, and who knows who's next? Can I ask you a question? No? Well, I'd like to, I'll ask for a talk.
I'll make a statement after you finish, but I'd let you have the floor. I would ask you, Mr. Black, just to concentrate your comments on the bill.
Sure. Is there a fiscal note attached to this bill?
No.
Okay.
Not yet, anyway.
Okay.
And I don't know if you were here, but this bill has been held for further study.
Okay, I assume as much. A fiscal note is incredibly important because the potential impact of this bill is so substantial, as I'm sure you'll hear from mayors and town managers as time goes on here. Where is the slow, deliberative process, legislative process, that leadership tends to talk about? The Master Lever took 50 years. This bill has been around 2 weeks and we're already considering passing it. So my point being, I know I can see you getting a little agitated here. The point is that this bill is being handled differently than a lot of other bills.
Mr. Block, I asked you, it's not. If you weren't here from the beginning, but I went through a preamble. I'm going to ask you to conclude and stay specific on the bill and not the legislative process. But I want to say this, Mr. Block, because this is a question that maybe a lot of people have, is why are we hearing this bill? Because we hear every bill, every sponsor asks. Now, whatever idea any representative has, however good or bad you may think it be, it's called democracy. There are many ideas that come through this building. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. But everyone has a right to be heard. Everyone has a right to bring their idea forward. No matter how much you and I may disagree on something, or maybe even agree on something, the reality is I would never presume that my ideas are better than yours, and I don't want you to presume that your ideas are better than mine. That's why we have this process. This bill is being treated like every other bill that comes before us. The sponsor is introduced, the sponsor requested a hearing, there's a hearing today. It's held for further study. That is standard operating procedure with every other bill that we have heard since I've been chairman for 2 years of this committee.
I understand, I repeat every word of what you just said.
Thank you. Would you take any questions from the committee?
I will conclude right now. We should pay our firefighters fairly and in line with what firefighters make in other similar places around the country. This bill has nothing to do with fair firefighter pay. This bill would lock in unfair pay structure where Rhode Island cities and towns pay more for fire than other places. I ask you to reject this poorly considered, rushed, loaded, and unfair bill, which will destroy jobs and harm our economy. Table this bill and study it. When you learn how the rest of the country deals with these issues, I suspect you'll be happy that you did.
Representative Chippendale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Block, relative to your statements, as I read the bill, it allows for the CBA process to continue. And listening to your testimony, it seemed not to reflect that. How would you address the language that is in this proposed statute that does allow for the CBA process?
The CBA process, this bill as I interpreted it, and please, for any lawyers who are up there or anywhere else, you can correct me, as I understood, it's defining the structure of overtime. It's saying that all hours worked above 42 are subject to overtime. That's not a negotiation. That's a statement of law, if it passes. No? How did I get that wrong?
No, I'm just simply asking because your testimony seemed to indicate that there was no leeway, and it seems that cities and towns still have the ability to collectively bargain. As I'm reading this again.
How does that relate, though, to the statement that 42 hours, all hours worked beyond 42 must be subject to overtime? Is that overridden later on in the bill?
No, it's collective bargaining. That's the only the question I have is, when I may be misreading this, why can't cities and towns engage in the collective bargaining process and dictate wages that way? Or are you saying that this will supersede the collective bargaining process?
My interpretation of the bill was it seemed to be dictating to cities and towns how to handle or what they would be paying for all hours worked above 42 hours.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Block? Mr. Block, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.